Okay, now, what are the great schools, the great Sunni schools? The Hanafi school. Okay, so we were going to talk about the Hanafi school, and this school is the largest of all the schools. And of course, it's among the oldest of all the schools. And in many ways, it's among the most important of the schools, because the Hanafi school lays down a lot of the methodology and a lot of the orientation which will be taken on by the Maliki and the Shafi'i school. And Imam al-Shafi'i used to say, "An-nasu iyalun ala Abi Hanifa." He used to say that everyone is a dependent of Abu Hanifa. Everyone relies on or takes from Abu Hanifa, and this is very true. One of the things that Abu Hanifa did is that he asked the questions. You know, the questions that you ask determine the answers that you get. And Abu Hanifa, as we'll see when we come to him, was a proponent of theoretical reasoning, of thinking of problems and questions before they occur. So Abu Hanifa compiled a whole list, whole volumes of questions. Questions about things that sometimes wouldn't happen for hundreds of years. Whereas the other schools didn't do that. The other schools would deal with legal problems as they occurred. And in fact, they disliked entertaining questions about things that were speculative and theoretical. So Abu Hanifa was very different in that regard. The principal Imam here is Abu Hanifa. And the school, of course, takes its name from him. And where was that school based? Later on it will become based in Baghdad, but of course Baghdad didn't exist in Abu Hanifa's early days. So where did the school grow up? Excuse me? No, in Kufa. So this is another really important aspect of the development of the schools of law. Kufa was a garrison city, meaning that in the Islamic conquests, this was a city that was created especially for the army. The army was garrisoned in this city, and the city was created around the different tribes that made up that eastern army. When the Muslims conquered the core region of the Islamic world, they created garrison cities, and they also, in some cases, settled open regions. Yeah, go ahead.
I just want to answer them with his opinion, or just leave them open?
The question is that if Abu Hanifa asked lots of questions, did he answer those questions? And Abu Hanifa always answers his questions. So he welcomes you to challenge him, and he welcomes you to have another answer. But Abu Hanifa was absolutely brilliant, no question about that. Very humorous, very cosmopolitan, and he was a person who really had insight, into the way things were and probably the way that things would become. See, the Maliki school, Imam Malik was different. Imam Malik, as you will see, was very intelligent, very gifted. But Imam Malik was a person who did not like speculation. And he didn't like a lot of open discourse. Abu Hanifa wanted people to talk. He wanted people to debate. And if you left his circle and went to set up your own circle, that would be all right, but he would probably send somebody with questions. And if you were unable to answer the questions, you'd probably come back to sit with Abu Hanifa again. But Imam Malik was different. Imam Malik, if you asked him a question, he would say, "Has this happened in fact?" And if it didn't, he would say, "Once it happens, ask me." And Imam Malik was very cautious He's almost like the opposite of Abu Hanifa. Abu Hanifa, I wouldn't say that Abu Hanifa wasn't cautious, but Abu Hanifa wants to get things boiling, get things going. Imam Malik is very careful, extremely careful. And he used to teach his students to say 2 words. He used to train them over and over again to say 2 words. What were those words? La adri, I don't know. And he used to say, La adri, I don't know, is half of knowledge. As soon as you learn to say, I don't know, which none of us say, right? Very hard to say those words. But as soon as we learn to say, I don't know, then 50% is done. You are half a scholar. So this was where Imam Malik was. And when Imam Malik died, he had great students that had studied with him for 30 years. Ibn Wahab, who was the leading scholar of Egypt, and Ibn al-Qasim, who was the leading scholar of Egypt as well. He got lots of Egyptians in his circle, by the way. And they had studied with him for 30 years and 20 years. But they didn't really have a school. And so one of the Malikis, who was from Iraq, he went to the circle of Abu Hanifa and he got all their questions. He didn't get the answers. He got all their questions. He didn't want their answers. He wanted his answers. But he got all the questions of Abu Hanifa, which is volumes of questions. And then he came to Medina and he found that Imam Malik had passed away. Actually, when he went there, Imam Malik was still alive. And when he came back, Imam Malik had died. And then he would go to the major students of Imam Malik and ask them, did Imam Malik answer this question? If he did, they would write it down. If he didn't, he would say, how do you think he would have answered this question? And then they would say, he probably would have answered it this way. And they would give proof. That's where the Maliki school comes from. So again, as Imam al-Shafi'i said, al-fiqhu iyalun ala Abi Hanifa. That's the statement, that jurisprudence or fiqh is a dependent, it's a child, a dependent child of Abu Hanifa. The Malikis took their questions from him, they developed their school that way. This is a very, very interesting story. But in any case, we'll look at these schools, we'll try to look at the Shia also, we'll try to talk about the differences, the different, the different considerations that come into play historically and politically and otherwise. The importance of Abu Hanifa is essentially in the formation of law schools. And in the case of the Maliki school, the fact that he articulated so many issues was something that engendered the creation of the Maliki school, because they took those questions from Abu Hanifa's people and then they tried to provide themselves with answers for the same questions but from their own perspective. So Abu Hanifa was very theoretical. He was very speculative. And with the exception of Abu Hanifa and one of his teachers, maybe nobody else was. So in the great speculative work that Abu Hanifa did, he began to explore horizons that didn't even exist. And that meant that legal theory became enriched by that. Now, also with regard to methodology, he and his school are very important. So he's a very central figure.